Welcome to the Payments Leaders Show, where I have a fireside chat with handpicked leaders from the industry. Now, hopefully they're going to share as well how they lead, how they build winning teams, winning communities, and why they embrace the opportunities in the payments industry before they look at the challenges. We know one of the greatest challenges in the technology industry is really the rivalry and the bent towards what I call defensive protectionism, and the win-lose nature of that, where it's one vendor versus another. Yet the culture I've observed in the payments ecosystem is quite different. It's far more partnership-led, it's far more collaborative, and it's far more about a community. One of the most accomplished people I've seen firsthand is Tony Craddock. Tony is the Director General of the Payments Association. Now, the Payments Association has a very clear purpose: to empower the most influential community in payments, where the connections, collaboration, and learning shape an industry that works for all. So, Tony, thank you for taking your time out of your very, very busy schedule and dying to, really looking forward to this one. So, welcome.
Adrian, it's a pleasure to be here, and thank you. It's an honor to have a chance to share my thoughts and perspectives with you and the team.
Wonderful, wonderful. So I wonder if we could dive straight in and say, why did you form the Payments Association community?
Well, so I think it's all about the word that you've used there, which is community. And although I'm passionate, I'm a PPP, I'm a passionate payments person. I'm first and foremost a community geek. I've always been fascinated ever since I was at school with how teams work together and how groups work together. And through my 20s, I set up my first small company, and while I was interested in the publishing industry, and just almost by chance, really, I sat down with a few people and said, look, maybe we're stronger together. We sat down with a few competitors, and I set up something called the Association of Publishing Agencies when I was about 30, and it was fascinating. I discovered that actually not only did I rather relish the opportunity to sit down with people from competitive interests and from different walks of life, but if you can do it in a way that is enabling me as an individual to get fulfillment as well, that kind of seemed like a pretty cool thing to do. So I then spent the next 20 years not doing that as a business. And eventually, about 15 years ago, realized that actually maybe I could make a living out of this, and have created a community which is, if you like, a commercial community that seems to really work for all the different stakeholders. So, I did it because I'm a community geek, really.
Wonderful, wonderful. I love that right at the heart of the conversations we've had. It just seems to me is you're always looking for multiple wins. And actually, that's ultimately the definition of a community. If the community can win, so wonderful, wonderful.
Yeah, and Adrian, there's something extraordinary about the payments industry, which is, if you're in the flour industry or the baking industry, it's slightly different. There's the value chain is start to finish. In the case of payments, it's much more networked. It's much more integrated. So today I might be selling to you. Tomorrow you might be my partner, and the next day you may be my competitor. And so we have to go into a room thinking there's opportunities abound here. So if I'm open and I'm collegiate and collaborative and open in my approach, then I'm much more likely to win for my company, for myself and my shareholders and my customers than I am if I'm purely competitive.
Wonderful, wonderful.
Yeah.
If we could go a bit deeper on that, recently when it was actually with Anand Patel, I bet it'd be great to give Anand a shout out. He does love a good shout out, Anand. So the shy retiring individual he is. But I recently heard you say when you stood next to him that the Payments Association community is about friendship and connection. Can you share more with me about that, or more with us?
Yeah, so as human beings, we're looking to connect with other people through our lives. And I know we focus on careers and businesses and capitalism and making money and everything. But the reality is that we get up in the morning and we kind of want to go out, do the best we can, enjoy ourselves, learn stuff, chat to people, have fun, and ideally do that with people that you really like. And people you really like become your friends. They just do. I mean, whether you want to call them a friend or not, I don't know. But honestly, the behavior I see in our dinners, our networking events, our conversations, our project teams, it's the sort of behavior you'd have around your friends. People like each other, they're committed to each other, they care for each other. Now, no, it would be grand to say that that I have very much to do with that, other than simply creating the context in which those relationships can be established and built. So I'm a context maker. Really, that's my role. And actually, that's the role of the 35 people who work for the Payments Association. We're enabling a context in which these relationships, and the definition of a relationship is a mutually beneficial exchange of value. And why not go a little bit deeper than just the cursory business to business type relationship, and get to enjoy people and get to love the people you're working with. And heck, isn't that cool? You can get up in the morning, do good work with people you love to spend time with, and make money while you're doing it. I mean, what's not to like?
Wonderful. I'm smiling here because you and I are so aligned on this is the way. Um, yeah, some people sometimes say to me, "You're crazy. You think you can have a wonderful career, be really successful, and enjoy it?" And I'm like, "Yeah." As a career coach, yeah, absolutely. And
Yeah,
as a
funny.
community, I love what you said there about context maker, and I can just confirm that the rooms I've been in, that's so much the case. When did that come? If we could just explore, when did that come to you that you thought, actually, this is my thing? This is the thing I'm really, really good at.
Well, it's because I'd set up two trade associations before, almost by accident. And I spent a decade running it. No, I spent about 5 or 6 years running a publishing business. I spent about a decade being a consultant. I was not a particularly good publisher, although I made good money out of it. I was not a particularly good consultant, although I made a living out of it. I then thought to myself, and I've just read. It was all because of reading. Honestly, Adrian, I read books like The Capitalist Code, the Catalyst Code by David Evans, another Evans. I read a book on innovation leadership and platform businesses, and I realized that you could apply the thinking. Maybe if you could apply the thinking of a platform business to something with some of the softer factors around community, then what you can do is you can end up with there being enough money to pay for the platform. The trouble with platforms, and volunteering is one of these examples, most trade associations are set up by volunteers, people who want to do good, rather
Yeah.
than people who want to make a creative, who want to create a commercial catalyst for change. That's what we do. The ones who kind of do it because they think it's a good thing to do, it generally doesn't work. Or rather, it works to an extent, but there's a cap. There's a cap on the value. There's a cap on the effectiveness. And what we've done, I think, is we've applied our innovation thinking to the rather traditional trade association model, and we've created something that I think is not completely unique. There's things like the GSM Association, which has about 1,000 corporate members, and a huge event, Mobile World Congress in Barcelona every year, other than COVID's. And so there are some other people who've done it, but I think nobody's ever done it in the payments industry. And it was absolutely. I was just lucky. I was lucky, at the right place, right time, and about the time when I thought maybe the payments industry needs this. There were six trade associations that came together under UK finance, and Payments UK disappeared. So there was no Payments Trade Association, and I said, well, it's clearly needed. I'll step into the gap. It was quite a big step at the time, because I thought, who am I? What on earth right do I have to claim to be representing the payments industry? But the big shift, honestly, if you had to say what was the one trigger, it was setting up our advisory board.
Okay. Okay.
So up until that point, I thought my job was to push value to everybody else. We had to deserve the money we were paid.
Mm.
And I couldn't ask people for help. But as soon as I realized that actually not only were people happy to provide that help, but actually they enjoyed it. and they were fulfilled through providing it, then I could build this group of senior executives. We've now got about 18 senior executives voted by our industry to represent the members, making sure our governance is tight, making sure our direction is appropriate, making sure we're accountable. It's a really powerful group. When I did that, I realized we were essentially bringing our customers into the heart of our business.
Wow.
And from that, they then told us what to do. It was then easy.
Yeah.
We just had to do it.
Wonderful, wonderful. So I'm hearing there the tipping point there. Well, first of all, the tipping point was you've done this a few times before, and this time it was going to work. Yep.
Yes.
And I think so there's a great lesson in there. I think for many people, even with the World Cup, I think it's ironic that Argentina won, yet they lost a really important pool game. Exactly the same in Rugby World Cup. South Africa lost a pool game, yet went on to win it. So you showed up, stepped into the void, and then rather than, as you said, pushing, actually having your customers at the center of what is that needs doing to serve the industry.
Yeah, you've understood it exactly. Yeah, and they always say put your customers at the heart of your business, but there's nothing more powerful than getting an advisory board of people. And by the way, they're not there for me. They're there for the collective good. They're there to be able to help as well as they can through their experience, their connections, their guidance, their ideas and creativity, to help us play the role of helping the payments industry be the most influential trade association in payments, or to get the Payments Association to be the most influential trade association in payments, which is our purpose. Wow. And actually, they've seen we've had an impact. We have had an influence, not just on government, although we have, but on the regulators, but largely on the perceptions of the payments industry. I think we're now seen as an increasingly sexy place to be. We're seen as an important and valued part of the fintech space. We're not seen as a dull and dusty, rather frumpy plumbers of financial services, which is what we were seeing maybe 15 or 20 years ago. This is the place to be, and it's partly because we've made it that.
Wonderful. Yeah, I love how that not just repositioning has happened, but that's happened with a lot of hard work and a lot of commitments, but an ecosystem approach rather than a single vendor approach, or just in the interest of one stakeholder.
Yeah. Somebody once said to me, it must have been quite easy running a trade association. And of course, I started this from my back room with the support of my dearly beloved and devoted wife, Tori, who's very actively involved with some parts of the business as our company secretary even now. Doing this was really very easy. We got the right people around us and worked hard for 15 years.
Yeah. Well, yeah, become an overnight success it takes 20 years to become an overnight success, as this happens in many careers. Yeah. So your passion for the industry is obvious here, but what excites you about the opportunities that are in the payments industry? Because you're right, it's become a headline, particularly over the last decade. But what specific opportunities excite you?
So there's a fair number of things that are going on at the moment in financial services generally. The financial services industry is the single largest pool of profit in the world. So there's more money made in financial services than any other industry, more than arms, more than pharmaceuticals, more than travel or tourism. Financial services is where the money is. And ironically, payments in financial services is where the money is as well. It's everybody needs to move money to be able to make money. Yeah. So if you can find a way of doing it more cheaply, more instantly, and more securely, then you have the potential to solve some real problems in the world. I'll give you an example. So international trade, the movement of goods and services globally. Everybody who's studied even basic economics knows that if we have a thriving trade if we have thriving trade in the world, then what happens is the people who are good at making stuff benefit from the people who are buying it from them in a way that's better if they keep it than if they keep it to themselves. But the movement of money that pays for that is currently done in a very, very clunky way, needing letters of credit, bills of lading, and it's all because nobody trusts each other, and you need to have professional services involved. This makes up between 3 and 7% of all of the value that's moved globally. Now, just imagine if we could find a way of taking 1% off that. What would we do with 1% of everything traded in the world? How much difference could we make? Not just to how much money we make, but actually to how much we give back, to how much we impact upon the places in the world that have problems. So that's the sort of thing that excites me.
Yeah.
Now, the current payment system is working pretty well. But just imagine if I could come up with something that was pretty much as good as that, as secure, as quick, and as cheap. But that had the capacity for me to add a program to the money. And when you say those words, it sounds really odd. What do you mean a program to the money? Well, just imagine if you could have programmable money. Just imagine if I could actually be saying to myself, well, I'm gonna pay for this product that is being sold by Adrian, and attached to this piece of money is a contract that says that Adrian can only spend this money on goods and services in that don't include that are spent on in this country only. For example, because I wanted this to be supportive of the UK trade rather than other trade. The possibility of programming money to either ensure that things like the buyback loans, we had £16 billion worth of buyback loans that have somehow gone missing. If we could have attached a contract to those buyback loans that said that that money could not have been moved outside the UK, then we would probably have lost a lot less of those buyback loans. And so there's a whole lot of opportunities. And by the way, we don't know them yet because they haven't been discovered. This is the area that we generally, most people don't know that they don't know about programmable money. I know that I don't know about it. And part of what I see is a really exciting spectrum of new opportunities to create brilliant new solutions to payment problems going forward, using things like distributed ledger technology, stable coins in particular. So I'm excited because the new technologies are coming in. I'm also excited because outside the EU, the UK has an opportunity to be different. And I'm hoping that the recent promise from the government to make the biggest change in financial services for the last 30 years is a promise that will be fulfilled through the payments industry. We've got some thoughts on that, and I'm excited because actually there's so much enterprise and passion and money in our sector from people who actually genuinely do believe that the world could be a better place through payments. I'm optimistic.
Wonderful. No, that's an incredible example there of, we're always looking for, there's so much leakage, let me be polite with the term, in the public sector, that a huge number there that's very frustrating as a taxpayer and etc. And it doesn't help government's reputation, let's be quite honest, from a governance perspective. So that's a mind-blowing example. But I love the fact that almost you don't know what you don't know about that, but at least you're aware of that. We're all looking for green dot moments where we get those ahas, and then we get a force behind that. So and I think that's the exciting piece. I've never seen payments be quite so the forefront of people's minds. So what about the flipping that over to what are the biggest challenges that happen there? It's almost, it seems to me, the technology is in place, and quite often I see with a lot of technologies, the technology quite often in place. It's just the right person needs to come along and bang these things together. So what do you see as the biggest challenge within the payments industry?
So let me give you 2 or 3 of those. First of all, the fraudsters and the scammers are getting smarter. They're simply getting smarter than we're getting good at stopping them, and as a result, there's more scams and more frauds. Fraud is a very public crime because there's a victim, and so we of the suspicious activity reports, the SARS that are reported every year, 1% are investigated. Of those, 1% are prosecuted. Of those, 1% are found guilty. So it's highly, highly, we're not good at it, and we've got to get better at it. And the PSR has some ideas, some of which we like, some of which we don't. But we will get to close down scammers, and they will then come up with some other means of stealing from people. But that's the number one challenge. Number two challenge is money laundering. It's actually it's a much bigger problem than fraud, but because it doesn't have a victim, it's much less public. But the movement of money illicitly to promote terrorist financing, drugs, child abduction, pornography, and did you say tax evasion? So anything to do with money laundering, we've got to start plugging the gaps, and programmable money can help with that. If you know who people are in the value chain of the movement of money, then and each person's identity is secured. Is it Deutsche Bank's just been fined $2 billion for their Estonian adventure?
Yes,
yeah. $300 billion was money laundered through 3 branches of the Deutsche Bank in Estonia. I do feel sorry for them in a way, because this is a very public thing, but we've got to get to show examples of where money laundering is just not acceptable. We've got to stop it. So that's the second one. I'd say that the next one, and this is the third challenge we've got to face, is increasing scrutiny from the regulators. Now, they're doing the best that they can. They're doing the job that they want to do, or they're meant to do. The difficulty is that we've got a few examples, Wirecard, Capital and Partners, of big financial disasters. And what's happening as a result is that there's very much tighter regulation and regulatory scrutiny put on current people in the industry. What that generally means is the big banks de-risk, so they're going to lend less and they're going to provide fewer bank accounts because it's too risky. The investors into our sectors will become more reluctant to put money in. So we'll get less investment. It'll also cost us more to run our companies, because we've got things like consumer duty. It's going to cost a lot of money. If you haven't got consumer duty sorted in your company, do it. Go and read up about it. We've done a white paper on it at the Payments Association. Go and learn, because if you don't, you'll end up, it'll cost you a lot more than if you have to invest the money in complying with the regulations. So my worry is we're going to get strangled by too much regulation, and that is honestly overarching everything. We have to have enough freedom to innovate. We have to have the freedom to be responsible. We have to be trusted. And if we overdo the regulatory scrutiny and compliance, then it becomes too costly. And ultimately, the consumer is the one who's damaged, because they either don't have the range of products or services available, or they have to pay more for them as a result. So I'm worried about that, Adrian. I really am.
Yep, absolutely. So I think does give us, I suppose, the opportunities are there, though, for us to respond, and say outside of the EU, as well as for the UK regulator, particularly, to embrace those opportunities. So I wonder if we could just switch tacks to just a little bit here. And I know how passionate you are about the payments industry, and anybody who's ever met you will know that. If you, as I'm sure you do, and I do as well, this industry is dependent on bright talent coming through and the gene pool expanding. We need that. And it was fascinating. The other day, I was only at one of the events, and there was a chap who was an intern, and we met 4 of us, including Anant and his team, and he just drilled us for like sort of 5-10 minutes each. And he was like, I'm just a sponge. I'm just picking up on this industry. I'm just an intern. But why did you join the industry? And it was just fascinating to see his passion and his curiosity. But if you were advising somebody young who's looking at various career options, why do you think they should join the payments industry?
Well, it's a chance to, well, first of all, the payments industry is a hotbed of opportunity. It really is. And it's interesting because one of my friends is, their son is just studying maths at Exeter, and he's a first grade student. He's just coming to the end of his 3rd year, and we've got some time together on Thursday. And I'm going to ask him which industries he's first of all, where is he fascinated? And if you ask yourself, what could be more fascinating than working in an industry which people use many times every day? So how many times do you pay and get paid? You pay and get paid when you go to the shops, when you buy something online, when your utility bills are being paid. And it's fascinating to see how money moves. So first of all, it is a fascinating industry. It touches people every day, all the time. And it's also not straightforward. This is a complicated industry, and with complexity comes opportunity, because if you're smart and you're enterprising, you can prize out an opportunity for yourself, as I did, as many of the companies on our membership list. We've got nigh on 200 members. Each of those companies started somewhere with somebody saying there's a gap in the market. And because it's so complicated, because it's changing so fast, because it's got new consumer needs, it's got new regulation, and it's got new technology. Those three things are the magic formula in any industry. So I say come on down. Also, we're a pretty nice bunch of people, aren't we? I mean, most of the people in this industry are good people to work with. They're great fun. If you can make money having fun with people you like, doing things you like, then what can be wrong with that?
Wonderful, wonderful. I was dying for the Tony sales pitch of the payments industry, and you certainly haven't let us down on that front. Wonderful, wonderful.
Well, this is great opportunity here. I mean, I think that let me caveat this in that financial services is rarely seen as a really exciting industry.
Yeah.
Technology is rarely seen as exciting, particularly for women. I want to encourage women to see that just because it's money and just because it's technology doesn't mean to say it's dull. It's exciting, almost in spite of those things. It's exciting because the products you've got to market, the understanding of the law and the application of the different compliance requirements are fascinating. You just have to be open to seeing it as much more than just tech. It's not much more than just fintech. It's much more than that.
Yeah. And also, just as an observation for that, actually, it's the ecosystem nature. I think, as you say, it's and again, I think particularly women. Again, we do a lot of work. We've got a separate program called Impactful Negotiation for Women, about trying to close the gender pay gap and also the gender opportunity gap. But actually, on average, women are far better at being collaborative. Yeah.
You're so right. You're absolutely right. They're more open, and they're more empathetic. They're more able to put their own egos to one side. And again, I'm massively generalizing here, I'm sure. Sure. But no, I agree with you. I think that, but I mean, also you look at people like Joanne Dewar, who's an amazing CEO, who's risen to the top of GPS, and has done phenomenally well for her and her various stakeholders. She's genuinely collaborative, and there's some great examples. Andrea Dunlop, who's our deputy chair, who's the CEO of Access Payments Group, and then people like Marion King, who's the chair of our advisory board. She's an amazing woman. Mandy Lamb, who's spent her career around the world and is now head of Visa in the UK. Genuinely collaborative, and these are good. Alison Donnelly, who's our industry leader of the year at the Pay 360 Awards in 2021. She's just, these are people who are just much